Before beginning the story, I'd like to say a big thank you for visiting my new channel. I'm going to be uploading alternate history-related stories every single day. If that sounds good, be sure to leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. It means a whole lot when just getting started. I hope you enjoy the story. I've lived on this property for 11 years, and I know the deer the way you know any neighbors you've never spoken to, but whose patterns have become part of your understanding of a place. I know which routes they use coming down from the ridge, which section of the tree line they emerge from in the early morning, where they bed in the field east of the house on warm afternoons. I know the size of the local population by rough count across seasons, know which does have fawns in which years, know the particular buck with the asymmetrical rack that has been working the same territory since I moved here and that I've watched age into something ancient and deliberate by deer standards. I'm not a hunter, and I'm not a wildlife photographer, and I have no professional relationship with the local fauna. I've just been here long enough that paying attention has become a form of companionship with a place. The first time I saw a deer standing upright, I was at the kitchen window in early September, the light just turning toward evening, and the doe was at the tree line about 40 feet from the yard's edge, standing on her hind legs, fully upright, with her forelegs hanging at roughly the position they'd hang if she were a person standing with their arms loosely at their sides, not rearing, not the dynamic motion of a startled animal coming up to get height for a better look and coming back down, just standing, still, fully extended, oriented toward the interior of the woods rather than toward the house or the yard or anything in my direction. I watched her for about 3 minutes. She didn't move. Then something shifted in the light and I looked away. And when I looked back, she was gone, back to 4 legs and normal deerness somewhere at the edge of the tree line. I've spent enough time around deer to know that this is not a thing deer do. They rear. They stand briefly on hind legs, reaching for something elevated or responding to a threat. They do not stand still and upright for 3 minutes with their forelegs hanging loose and their attention directed toward the interior of a woods they've just walked out of. I noted it the way I note unusual things, as a data point without a category, filed under the general heading of the natural world, doing things that don't have immediate explanations, which happens often enough if you pay attention, and which usually resolves into something ordinary on reflection. A week passed without incident, and I had mostly let it settle into the background of things I'd seen and not explained. Then there were 3 of them. A Tuesday morning, the light still low. 3 deer at the tree line on the north side of the property. All 3 upright, all 3 still, all 3 oriented in the same direction, which was not toward the house or the field or the road, but toward the same section of interior woods the doe had been facing the previous week, standing with the same quality of stillness I'd seen before, not the dynamic stillness of an alert animal, the frozen pause of prey that has heard something and is processing, but the settled stillness of something in a posture it intends to maintain, something that is doing something rather than reacting to something. I went out onto the porch. They didn't respond to my presence, which was wrong in a different way from the standing, because deer respond to human presence, to smell and sound and movement, and these 3 registered none of it. Their attention was directed toward the woods with a completeness that excluded everything outside that direction, including me. I watched them for 11 minutes. I know the duration because I checked my phone when I went out and checked it again when they dropped back to 4 legs simultaneously, all 3 at once, and walked back into the tree line without any communication between them that I could observe. No signal, no sound, just a simultaneous decision to end the posture and leave. I went inside and searched for documented instances of deer standing upright for extended periods and found exactly the kind of results you'd expect. A handful of videos of deer rearing briefly, some discussion of the behavior in hunting forums. Nothing that described what I'd watched for 11 minutes on a Tuesday morning. I found a wildlife biology Quanda forum and posted a description, phrased carefully, and received responses ranging from mildly interested to skeptical that stayed at the surface level of the question and didn't give me anything useful. The behavior became frequent in October. Not daily, but several times a week. One deer or several, always at the tree line, always still, always oriented toward the same section of the North Woods. I started mapping it, marking the direction they faced on a rough sketch of the property and the surrounding woodland, and the consistency was exact in a way that randomness wouldn't produce. They were not facing randomly into the woods. They were facing a specific point in the woods, or something moving in the woods that remained in a consistent general location across all the observations. I went into that section on a Saturday in mid-October, a clear, cold day, following the bearing the deer had consistently indicated across weeks of observation. It was woodland I'd walked before without giving it particular attention. Mixed deciduous growth. Nothing that had ever distinguished itself from the surrounding forest in any way I'd noticed. It distinguished itself now. I want to be precise about what I found because precision is the only way to describe something that resists description. The trees were the same trees I'd walked through before, the same species, the same approximate age and spacing. But there was a quality to that section that I registered before I could analyze it, a change in the way the light came through the canopy, or the way sound moved through the space, or the way the ground felt underfoot. Something at the sensory threshold of detection that my body was responding to before my brain had an explanation for it. Wrong is the available word, and it's not adequate, but it's what I have. The section of woods felt wrong in a way that had nothing to do with anything visible or audible or nameable. I stood at the edge of it for about 5 minutes, and then I walked back to the house. I found the wildlife biologist through the forum, a researcher named Holt, who had responded to my initial post with more seriousness than anyone else, and who had left a contact option in their profile. I sent a detailed description of everything I'd observed, including the duration of the standing behavior, the simultaneous nature of the transitions, the consistent orientation, and the quality of the wood section the deer seemed to be oriented toward. The response took 3 days and was longer than I'd expected. Holt said they'd encountered documented cases of similar behavior in 3 other regions over the course of their research career, always in rural or semi-rural areas with established deer populations, always in the period preceding what they described as a significant ecological disruption that had never been fully explained in any of the cases they tracked. They said, They were reluctant to specify what the disruption involved because the specifics varied and because, in their experience, the specifics were less important than the behavioral signal, which in all three cases had been read too late. They said that in 2 of the 3 cases, the upright behavior had preceded a shift in the deer population's orientation from the surrounding environment toward the human structures in the immediate area, and that this shift had been the precursor to the deer leaving the area entirely in a compressed time frame. They asked if the orientation had changed from the woods to the house yet. I read that question on a Friday afternoon, and I looked out the window at the tree line while I was reading it. There were 4 deer at the tree line, standing upright, facing the house. I sat very still at my desk and looked at them, and they looked at the house with the same quality of settled, maintained attention they'd been directing at the North Woods for 6 weeks. All 4 of them, still and upright and facing the building I was sitting inside. I watched them for 22 minutes. Then they dropped to 4 legs and walked back into the woods. I replied to Holt and told them the orientation had shifted. The response came back within the hour, which was faster than any previous response, and said that in each of the 3 cases Holt had studied, the shift in orientation had preceded the complete departure of the deer population from the area by approximately 2 weeks, and that Holt's strong recommendation, framed carefully and with several qualifications about the limits of the available data, was that I pay close attention to what happened in those 2 weeks and be prepared to make decisions about my own presence on the property. I appreciated the care of the framing and didn't find it reassuring. The night observations started in the 2nd week of November. I'd been sleeping badly anyway, the quality of the nights on the property having changed in a way I couldn't locate in any specific sound or absence of sound, just a different quality to the dark outside the windows, and I was awake at 2 in the morning when I looked out the bedroom window and saw them. 6 deer at the tree line in the moonlight, upright, facing the house, standing in the specific stillness I'd been watching for months, in the dark this time, visible as pale shapes at the edge of the tree line where the moonlight reached the open ground. I watched them from the window for a long time. They didn't move. I went back to bed without being able to explain why going back to bed felt like the right response, and woke at first light and looked out, and the tree line was empty. The following night, there were none. The night after, none. The morning after that, no deer visible anywhere on the property, which was not itself unusual for a single morning, but which extended across the next 3 days without any deer at all appearing at the tree line or the field or any of the locations I'd associated with the local population across 11 years of observation. I went out to the tree line on the 4th morning. The ground there had the specific quality of a space recently vacated, a density of recent tracks in the soft earth at the tree line's edge that suggested that deer had been there in significant numbers and recently, and then the tracks moving into the woods in the direction of the north section, all of them heading in, none of them heading back out. I followed the tracks to the edge of the north section and stopped. The wrong quality I'd noticed in October was different now, stronger, present at a level above the sensory threshold rather than below it, the kind of wrong that doesn't require analysis because it's operating directly on the parts of a person that predate analysis. I stood at the edge of it and looked into it, and the woods beyond were silent in a way that was total and specific, the silence of a space that's been completely vacated by every living thing that had any say in the matter. From somewhere further in, past the section where the quality was strongest, I heard something moving. Not a deer or anything I'd encountered in 11 years of living in proximity to these woods. Something with size behind the sound of it, moving through underbrush with a deliberateness that suggested it wasn't concerned with being quiet. Moving in a direction that was neither towards me nor away from me, but perpendicular, crossing the woods at a depth I couldn't estimate, taking its time. I walked back to the house, not running, because running felt like a decision that would change something in a way I didn't want to change, but not slowly either. I went inside and locked the doors, which I don't normally do during the day, and I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee I didn't drink and looked out the window at the empty tree line. The deer were the warning system, and the warning system is gone. That's what I keep coming back to, sitting at the kitchen table with the empty tree line outside the window and the silence from the north woods that has persisted for 3 days now. Whatever the deer were oriented toward, whatever they were tracking across the weeks, they stood upright at the tree line, and then at the edge of my yard, and then faced my house in the moonlight, is still out there, still in the woods, still moving on whatever schedule it's moving on. The deer understood what was coming well enough to leave. I'm still here, which means I either understand it less than they do, or understand it enough to know that leaving is a decision I haven't yet made, and I'm not sure which of those is more accurate, and I'm not sure it matters. The tree line is empty this morning. The north woods are still silent. The coffee went cold while I was writing this, and outside the window the sky is doing what November skies do in this part of the world. Flat and grey and non-committal. The light that gives you no information about what's coming. I'm going to call Holt today and ask what happened in the 2 weeks after the deer left, in the 3 cases they tracked. I've been putting that call off since the deer disappeared. I think I've been putting it off because I already know the answer isn't going to help me decide anything, and because whatever is in the North Woods is going to do what it's going to do on its own schedule, regardless of whether I'm prepared for it, and because there's a specific kind of dread that comes from waiting for something you can hear but not see and can't name and can't negotiate with. And sitting in that dread with information about prior cases feels worse somehow than sitting in it without. The woods are quiet. The tree line is empty. Something is still out there, moving at its own pace, and the only things that understood it well enough to warn me have gone.